something a little more lighthearted, if you will. Not really. It's a very serious subject. Look, alternatives, and we've discussed many times about creating them and what I'm doing with comic books and what I'm attempting to do. My direct competition being Marvel and DC, not the random person that has one comic book character. That's not my competition. My competition is with them. Building extravagant universes for people to get very invested in. That's what I'm trying to build. So the question is why, right? I don't think we've answered it, but not to the degree of dedicating an entire segment for it. It's about alternatives, but why? Why the alternative? Reason being is because we've seen that mainstream has taken advantage of subculture. Really, it's the authoritarian left that's doing this. That has been existing for so long, right? You're talking about properties that have existed for ages. When you think Marvel, just think of the ones that we have problems with now in the direction. Marvel, DC, Star Trek, Star Wars. Brands that really try to even bait you with their nostalgia. And then they're bastardizing virtually everything that I wouldn't even say they created, because it's really just a bunch of group of blue-haired weirdos who are now in control of these guys who are writing bad, maybe stories based upon them. So when we talk about alternatives, the idea isn't simply just to create something that is in the similar space just for the sake of doing it. I've said many times that just being an alternative isn't good enough. You have to be good at it. So when I talk about prepping for this comic book, for example, the first book that we release, it needs to be the best that it can be. It needs to be in direct competition with the guys that we've been talking about. Marvel, DC. We need to do work that's better than theirs. And that's not going to be easy to do. But from artwork to story, all of that stuff, it's not just being an alternative. It's about being a good one that's viable, so we can replace these guys. See, we need a new cultural revolution. Definitely if people that value liberty are to become some sort of mainstay or impact in terms of cultural, because that's where it all starts. Change the culture by default, you change the politics you change the culture, then by default you change the politics. And it's not about beating you over the head with, let's say, my personal politics. I told y'all this isn't going to be ANCAP the comics. That's not what I'm writing, right? You just know that the creator values liberty and he doesn't fucking hate you. But this is going to be digestible for virtually anybody. That's what it's about. There are universal truths, and I believe that. But the idea is to try to have this cultural revolution so that on your wall, like this is what I grew up on your wall or your youngster's wall, these are Rippleverse characters, right? Instead of Soul, it's someone else that's culturally sort of relevant, though Soul is, still alive. You get what it is that I'm saying? Like, we're talking about coming up in a new generation of properties that people need to be privy to. And that's not going to be easy, but it's going to be necessary if we are going to combat these guys, the authoritarian left, because they have control over what you see right now. But that didn't happen overnight. They just realized how important it was, and people that valued liberty, be it people that are libertarian or whatever they call themselves, neglected it for so long. And they didn't realize how important that it was and how impactful that it was. And now they do. It's a little late because everything you watch is some message kind of in it, and the people that win the awards then that like maybe act in these or write these stories, they win the award based on your sales, and then they get on the podium and they tell you how much you suck because you didn't vote in the way that they thought that you should have. That's why these alternatives have to exist, but why these alternatives need to be good at what it is that they're doing. If you are a person that is a creator in these space, some of you guys have been there like me with music. You've been there. You just haven't out yourself. I say out yourself and allow the fans and the supporters to catch you, right? But also, people got to be mindful of what it is that you're doing and where your money's going. we thought we had the luxury of not worrying about that. And maybe sometime in our later lives, in our lifetime, we'll get to that point again, like it was in the 90s, where you could just buy something and you didn't have to care about what politics this person's had. It didn't matter. None of that mattered because we were kind of over a lot of this hump. But now we're where we're at, where everybody's consumed by all of this. And this is the world that we live in. Okay. So this is why I have my 49% rule, in that all I ask is for half, not half going to me, half going to people that are in these cultural spaces that don't hate you. And that's not an easy thing to do, but it just requires you got to fix your mind. It's like training your mind to think like you've never thought. And that is not only, okay, it's not just about, do I need this? It's about, okay, I want this or I need it. Who is the creator of this? And if you could just give 51%, a little over half, you'd be surprised how much the cultural tide shift. Because for so long, you look at the entertainment elites, like, for example, right now, for so long, these guys have been laced up, the pockets being laced up. They become rich off of people that they hate. And that's a great position for them to be in. That's a bad one for you, because you essentially are funding your own oppression. And people that will advocate for acts of aggression being used upon you. We're seeing that right now with the COVID stuff. So we need the alternatives, but it's not just on the creators to create. It's on the creators to beat on their crafts and to be good. Don't think you're warranted or owed support simply because you create an alternative. If your alternative is shit, that does us no good. But also from the customer standpoint, be mindful of where your dollar is going. Go seek out these people that are in these industries that don't hate you. Lace them up. And you'd be surprised how the culture would change and how fast it would. Because the left, that's how they operated for a very long time. And that's how they got the power that they got. But they really only got it because they were dependent on your dollar and tricking the people that they hate into buying, supporting, funding, subsidizing their shit. That's where the change has to be made, not just on the creator, but also on the customer. You just watched a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake. Catch us live at 12 p.m. throughout the week over at youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and follow us over at odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. If you want to watch the entire video cast after the show is over, just be sure to become a member on the YouTube channel. Of course, the full audio portion of the podcast is available for free on all major digital platforms, or just visit forcanonsake.com.